Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Craig!
1, 2, 3 QBs, tell Leslie and should you love more to sling the ball on Saturday nights. That is what fall camp is for. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently that is what fall camp is for after the last couple of years.
I had to go deep into my 2000s pop references for that one. I think that was from like the 2007.
Yeah, I don't even know.
It's the song 1, 2, 3, 4 by Feist.
Yeah, I was not, I don't think hip enough to know that song very well.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's more of an indie pop, but I think she got some pretty good, I think it even got into some commercials and things like that.
I see. Well, what's up, buddy?
Not much. We're recording on a Monday, which is pretty weird.
I know. I'm like, I'm trying hard to like, I just feel like I'm moving like a sloth right now. It's about what? It's like 8 o'clock, 8:45. It's 8:45. Feel like I'm moving like a sloth, and it is Monday. But when you're on teacher break, it's like every day is whatever day you want it to be. Like It's sort of bizarre. I don't know how many people have ever been on vacation long enough to just lose track of the days. In fact, I don't even know. Like, you've taken long vacations before. How long into a vacation do you have to get before you're like, I actually don't know what day it is?
I've done like 2-week vacations, and they've always involved lots of like moving from place to place. So when you're under that like pressure, you don't forget what day it is.
That's true.
But I think if you were just doing like a couple weeks at the same place, but what I should say is that this is Podcast versus Everyone.
This is Podcast versus Everyone.
I'm your host, Craig Powers, and my co-host.
That's right.
Is the sluggish Jeff
That's
Nusser.
Me. I'm not. See, this is the thing. Like, I don't feel sluggish. I'm just like slow right now. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever, but I don't know. I did see Sarah, my wife Sarah, for new listeners, follows somebody on Instagram who had a picture of basically she was holding up a sign. It's like this account that's like Teacher Life, and she's holding up the sign that says like, when you don't know what day it is anymore because you're on summer vacation. I was like, other people feel that way too. So, but going back to school here in a couple, I'm down to like about 2 weeks left of freedom.
You'll start knowing what day it is because you'll be counting down to that first day.
I know. I'll be so depressed. I do get a little depressed. Like, it's just sort of like, oh, gotta go back. Oh, well. But yeah, man.
What are you drinking to deal with your mild depression?
Well, when I went to Matchless last week or the week before, whatever week it was, I picked up a few beers. So this is the next Matchless selection. This is the Palma Berry, which is a tart saison with apple and blueberry added.
Yeah,
or maybe it's Palm Berry.
It's apple cider. Good Palm. So Palm is like apple in French.
Oh, there we go. All right, well that makes sense.
And
I thought it was like
de terre or something like that, or whatever. Palm de terre is like a potato. So like it's like apple of the ground is potato in French.
Okay, all right.
But palm and berry. So palm and blueberry. So they actually put apple cider in that beer. If I'm
So he said it just made sense to blend our year-old mixed culture saison with apple cider and fresh whole blueberries. So
how you feeling about that one?
It's excellent. Not too tart. Definitely tart, but not too tart. Not too acidic, which is always really nice. That's probably, I would imagine, has a lot to do with putting apple cider in it, which is, tends to be more sweet and not acidic anyway.
Right.
So, yeah, it's really good. So funny story. When I bought it, I thought I was buying some kind of pomegranate something.
Yeah.
But, nice surprise. But yeah, like, little bit different from last week's tart beer from Matchless. This one, like it said, saison based instead of the Flanders ale base. So
Right.
yeah,
It's funny.
real good.
It's pretty funny. Amanda and I took B down to the Engine House 9. We went for a walk and went to the Engine House 9 restaurant for dinner tonight. And sure enough, I had that beer on tap there.
That's funny.
Yeah, so I can give my review because I had it.
There you go. Let's
all
hear
of an
it.
hour and a half ago.
Attaboy.
Yeah, I had beautiful color. Man,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful color. You could tell it's a blueberry
Yep.
beer just because like the kind of deep color to it. There was definitely, I hadn't read the description. I saw palm, so I thought apple, but I also thought maybe it was pomegranate.
Oh,
too,
good. I
as
wasn't
well.
the only one.
No, yeah, I was like, I wonder, there's definitely like blueberry in this, but there's something else. Cause it has this sort of, it definitely is saison based, but it has this sort of like, a little bit of like vinegary quality to it. It's got this sort of like interesting, and then it's kind of like more uptick sweetness than you would expect out of it. And I was like, where the heck is that coming from? They're calling it a saison base. Like I would expect this more of a darker base. And then I went on Untapped and read the description. Yeah, sure enough, the apple cider I think is definitely what I was picking up there. So I would say I probably don't love the apple cider addition to it. But there's not you rarely see beers that are made with apples in them. I just don't think, I think they have way too many fermentable sugars. You could uptick the alcohol in your beer quite a bit if you let it ferment too much. But I also, I think that they just, if you can crush up some berries and throw them in, and they're basically juice. But like apple, if you just throw a whole apple, like if you're throwing whole apple fruit in there, so you end up seeing it like they just take cider and throw it in, and it definitely impacts. Like they have that thing listed at like 6.5%, but I think some of that apple cider fermented and brought it a little bigger, to be honest, because it tastes a little.
I'll let you know by the end.
Yeah, right.
I'll let you know in an hour.
Yeah, but that's funny that you did that beer. And
That is pretty hilarious.
I just so happened to have that one today. But yeah, so I am drinking another beer I picked up in. I said last podcast I went to Yakima. So this week I'm drinking a beer from Yakima again in a crowler, so I was able to save for this long. So this is a beer called Slow Motion Potion from Valley Brewing. So that fits with our sluggish start to this podcast. So this is it's a hazy IPA. I've had this beer many times before, and I think this is one of the best examples of a New England style IPA, like in the state of Washington. I think it's very well done. This is they nail the kind of creamy mouthfeel. They nail the low bitterness with great aroma. So I had it for the first time, I think a little over a year ago when I was visiting Yakima, and I was just, one of my friends, he's got a buddy that brews there. And so he's like, hey, you should definitely check them out. They're one of my favorites. And, my friend is like he drinks craft beer, but he's not like, super craft beer nerd. So I'm like, oh, maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll just be okay. He just likes it because of his friend, but it actually turned out some of their other beers are very good, but this one's like, they've been talking to, for people that are looking for, a hazy IPA that's, close to the New England style. Like this one's super on point, and I've been very impressed with it. I've had it in the crowler for, over a week now. So I think it's got a little bit of oxidation, a little bit of less carbonation, but it's still tasting pretty damn good. So well done, Valley Brewing in Yakima. Definitely, if you're in Yakima again, we talked about this last week. We don't need to hear about that no one stops in Yakima, Jeff. But if you
Hey
ever,
man, don't hold that against me now. Like
just if you're ever in Yakima, go ahead and give them a stop. Also, I should point out that I got invited to a Facebook group by someone who I don't know if I went to high school with him, but he's from Natchez, where I'm from, and I got invited to a Facebook group called Yakima is Beautiful. And apparently when you get invited to a Facebook group and you don't like accept it right away, they just keep putting posts from that group into your feed. And so you just
just in case you want to know what you're missing, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, cool, pictures of Yakima. Okay,
look at what you're missing.
Yeah, I know. So I'm like, that's okay. I'm not going to join the Yakima's Beautiful page. I see Yakima enough. I don't need to see anymore. But yeah, another, just on the topic of Yakima, I'll continue. Amanda and I, before this podcast, split a beer from a brewery in San Diego called Pariah. And the beer was called Pine by Yakima. So it's like a play on a name for a cologne.
Yeah.
So they, like in the description, they said basically it's like the cologne of Yakima. So yeah, Pine by Yakima. So I of course had to buy that when I had the chance to. But yeah, so if for anyone that doesn't know, Yakima produces roughly 70% of the hops in the country. People fly from all over the country and all over the world to get hops. Brewers fly from all over the country and all over the world to get hops from Yakima. So you will occasionally find beers named after Yakima. I know there's a brewery in New Zealand that has a Yakima IPA. There's one in Canada as well. There's a brewery in Pennsylvania that makes a hoppy brown ale called Yakima Glory. So that's Victory. So you'll see some homages to Yakima because all these brewers spend time in Yakima every fall picking hops. So Yakima has that claim to fame, which actually I don't think a lot of people know about. But since I'm giving Yakima so much love, just know that I have no plans of ever moving back there. So.
No, you don't. You don't want to go. You don't want to return to the motherland.
No, I'm good.
You're good.
I'm enjoying Tacoma. It's all good.
You're like, yeah. It was funny. I was listening to. I like to listen to Bomani Jones, his The Right Time podcast, and they were talking about NBA free agency, and they were talking about how people, whenever they talk about free agents, they always are like, ooh, they might go to whatever team because that's where they're from, right? Oh, they want to go home. They want to go home, and he's got this bit where he's always like, yo, not everybody want to go home. Not everybody likes where they came from. A lot of people left because they wanted to leave, which I always find kind of funny. I mean, I don't want to, I'm from a small, town about just 15 minutes north of Seattle or so. And I do not have any desire to move back to Snohomish County. That is not on my to-do list to move back north. So,
well, yep. And I know if I go to Yakima, it's like there's the Fred Meyer in Yakima, and you just run this risk of running into people that you never intended to talk to ever again.
Yeah.
And it's
like did we go to high school together? Yeah.
We're always doing bets when we go in. Well, I went to a small high school, so I definitely would know if we went to high school together. But
no, I'm just saying that you say that.
Oh yeah,
so that it's like, yeah.
They'd be like, "Of course we did. Don't be an idiot." But yeah. So it's always like a gamble when you go into the Fred Meyer. You got to stop by, pick something up when you're visiting the fam, and it's just like, who am I going to see this time?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always when my dad runs into people, maybe my friend's parents or whatever from high school. It's always like, well, was that the Fred Meyer? And I saw this person. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Thanks for the report, Dad.
Yeah, thank you for that.
That is sort of as a teacher, though, that is a part of my almost daily existence. Anytime I go into public, like if I go to the mall, I mean, not that many people go to the mall anymore, but on the rare occasions I go to the mall, I am virtually guaranteed to run into either a current student or a former student. The current students are funny if they're like sophomores, because they still almost look at you like elementary kids look at you, because elementary kids look at you like I thought you lived in the school,
right?
Wait, I've seen a teacher in the wild. Sophomores still have a little bit of that. They kind of look at you like, what are you doing at the mall, dude? And I'm like, I shop at the mall too, you idiot. It's like, but, it's worse when I run into a former student, particularly one that graduated 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. And then they're like, "Oh, you were my English teacher." And I'm like, "Oh, I do not remember your name."
Oh yeah.
At all.
It's fun. I had that when I was student teaching. Like the next spring after that, I was at a Mariners game and ended up sitting down right next to one of my students.
Yeah.
And I did not remember her name.
Dude,
I was like,
there is only so much space in our brain for this stuff. Like, I have a hard time from one year to the next sometimes. Like, just from one year to the next. And I'll see a kid in the hallway. And I'm like, I know you were my student. I recognize your face. And I'm going to be stalling for the next, 15 seconds while I search the recesses of my brain for your name. Right. I usually come up with it, but it sometimes takes a minute. So,
well, sometimes you just come over to my house for some beers and one of your former students is there as well.
That is true. Although Brad was never one of my students. He was just a student at the school while I was a teacher.
Yes.
So, but it's a fairly trivial distinction, I think.
I think so as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of things that might be trivial, we got WSU fall camp going, and what might be trivial is the difference between the 3 quarterbacks that we have. I'm pretty tired of talking about this.
Yeah.
But it's just not resolved. Trey Tinsley, Anthony Gordon, and Gage Gabrute are have all up to this point, and they had a day off today, but all after a scrimmage this weekend, and so they up to this point have been getting equal reps. So it doesn't seem, I read today, it looks like, from Theo, he expects Leach to kind of trim it down to 2. I think that was from Coug Fans reporting as well. Trim it down to 2, maybe by this week. But it just seems it's hard. I'm just not remembering did we have this? Was it just like this last year? Was it still like Minshew was still getting equal reps?
I think it was. I think it was. It was a couple of weeks before it seemed like, okay, it was probably, I would say the second scrimmage is when you started to sort of have the inkling that it was probably Minshew, that he was sort of taking the lead and that he was moving ahead. But, after I'm just not sure what they are, what they're picking up after a week. You and and I both have been saying all along that, it's probably Gabrute. Like Gabrute just, I think probably has a leg up matter what.
Here's what I think. Like if they're all equal, Gabrude's the one that's been in the system for a week, and he's equal to in the spring too, but he didn't really play. But and he's equal to the other 2 guys who've been in the system for years. Like
that's the road I was about to go down. Yeah. Like it's
I took it.
No, that's fine.
Pick another route.
This
one's traffic jam now.
You take
Google Maps is sending you a different way.
It's just, if they're equal, then probably Gabrude's going to be the guy, right? I mean, I think at this point, what you didn't want to see was, at least if you were of the belief that Gabrute is probably the best quarterback out of the 3, what you really didn't want to see was that Gabrute was sort of, tripping over his dick all over the place, that he was clearly lost and having problems and whatever. And we know what that looks like, right? Like I don't know how many of the beat writers have seen it, just because they're fairly new to the beat, relatively speaking. But you and I and any fans that go back to when Leach showed up, and Jeff Toole and Connor Halliday were running the air raid of that first spring. And that was man. I mean, you want to talk about not having a clue, or it was either the year after that or the year after, I don't remember, but, Tyler Brugman, when you watched him, you were like, that bro doesn't have a clue what he's doing, like he can't do this. The fact that Gabrude's out there and that's not what we're hearing, you're not there. There's not a sense that he's, clearly lost. I think that just sort of adds fuel to the idea that he's the guy. And, like you said, if he's only been in the system for, however many weeks, like live reps or whatever, and he's not appreciably behind the other guys, I think there's a sense that, he could get better even as he progresses, so if he's already even, at some point he's going to pass him. So, and maybe that's not true. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we could be seeing his peak right now, but that seems a little, that seems a little far-fetched that, you'd be getting his best right now. And it's probably pretty likely that whatever you're seeing from, Gordon and Tinsley is probably, their peak. I don't think you can expect them to get better.
Right. Yeah. They've had, they were competing for the job, 2 springs and 2 fall camps in a row.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, they should look like they know what they're doing, and they seem to, and it seems like Gebrut is basically at the same level as them. So Gebrut is the guy we already know he has a higher ceiling, so whatever. Yeah. So we've already talked about that. Well, I'm sure, maybe by next week we'll have a little bit more clarity around that. Still, what do we got? How long we got?
Maybe we won't, though. I mean, who knows? Like, I would say, well, last year, so I went back and read some of the stuff that I wrote about Minshew at the time, and it was about 2.5 weeks in when I wrote my Minshew feature for the preview.
So yeah, we're 19 days out from the opener right now.
Yeah, and we're about a week away from when I wrote that and felt like he was probably going to be the guy. So, I think that's probably where we're heading. But who knows? I mean, Leach. I mean, that dude, marches to his own drummer. If he decides he needs more time, then he'll just, take more time. So
yeah, but he has said that he doesn't want to do that. But
correct.
Yeah, but other position we talked about last week, but it's in flux again. So, talk about the secondary. So this is kind of the guys that we thought were obviously we talked about Bryce Beekman taking over Skylar Thomas's position last week, and then Skylar Thomas taking over Nickelback, and that seems that seems what's going to happen. Obviously, Marcus Strong is not losing his job. But obviously I'm getting a lot of information from like Theo and Coug fan and stuff.
Yep.
But like, what are the, from the practice reports, the Jalen's position, the strong safety position, you have, we've seen Daniel Isom, take the role, but then apparently at the scrimmage, you had, I'm sorry, no. So Daniel Isom was in the scrimmage, but at the other cornerback position, we saw Armani Marsh was he was the number 1 when previously it had been junior college transfer Derek Lanford and let's see who else was in there. George Hicks, who's been around a couple of years. So yeah. I mean, when I look at the guys, Langford is 6'2". So
yep.
You kind of think that he would have the edge. Marsh is listed at 5'8". So, I mean, if they really, what we had talked about earlier is that it looked very much like, given the guys that they're recruiting, that they want to get bigger on the back end. So if you want to get bigger on the back end, Langford's the guy. But if Marsh is really that good, who knows?
Yeah, the interesting thing to me was the Daniel Isom / Tyrese Ross battle that seems to be going on there at the strong safety position. Right. It's interesting because they're definitely two different kinds of players.
I'm sorry, it's the free safety.
Is it free safety?
It's free safety. I misspoke. Okay. Yep,
sorry. I thought Beekman was in that free safety spot. Anyway, whatever. It's really like it's curious because Ross is a little bit different kind of player. I think he's a little bigger, a little more physical. I could be wrong about that, but that's my recollection.
Yeah, that's just from what I remember from spring game and that's pretty much all I'm going off of. But
yeah, and he's a little younger. He's redshirt freshman, I think, or is he a redshirt sophomore? But we are all
he's a
over
redshirt
this.
freshman.
Okay,
Yep.
we are all over at this.
He's a
podcast.
redshirt freshman.
Yeah.
Hey.
So I love the idea of a redshirt freshman in theory, just, younger guy, whatever. But there's also I kind of like the idea of a guy who has a little more experience back there as well. I would not be surprised if the DB stuff sort of extends into the first couple of games.
Yeah.
It's not like, the quarterback situation where you got to have a guy. I would not be surprised if they sort of said, okay, look, we've got these different guys. We're not really sure how they all necessarily fit together. I'd like to maybe get a look at them in this configuration and get a look at them in this configuration. I do think it would be a little weird with, if there were position changes involved. I think they'd probably like to get that settled. I know Isom moved over from corner to play safety. Presumably they don't want to necessarily move him back, or at least not right now. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting for me to see. Ross is 6'2", 190, by the way. So he's definitely quite a bit bigger than Isom, who is 6 foot, 192. Same weight, but obviously a little different body type. So, and I imagine Ross has the potential to get even bigger, a la Dayon Buchanan, if he's where he went from, being a skinny freshman to a monster by the time he's a senior. So, so that's the part that I almost find that more interesting than the quarterback position, just because, I don't know, reading the tea leaves on the quarterback is just sort of whatever. And I also have some faith that, whoever plays quarterback is going to be fine.
Right.
Whether it's Gordon or Tinsley or Gabrud. DB, it's I don't know, he's got kind of these different options of different people back there. And most of them are pretty unknown. I mean, we know some things about Marcus Strong. We know he's solid. We know some things about Hicks. He played a little bit last year, but
right.
Other than that, it's sort of a bunch of unknowns.
Yeah. But we've seen, and what you mentioned, I think you're spot on with talking about how this will trickle over into the first few games, because we've seen, not last year as much, because I just didn't have the depth last year, or they had three guys that at the top, and then one gets injured, and then you have two guys, and they play the majority. But like you said, we did see Hicks, and we saw guys play. But I think we've seen in the past them rotate out the corners a little bit, and so I think, particularly at corner, we'll see that, and we could see it as safety. I think safety probably a little bit more likened to the free safety, a little bit more likened to the quarterback, where you want to have a guy, but really if they're not that different, and you're just trying to figure out. I mean, you have two games that you hopefully should not lose, regardless of who is back there. Just don't get your signals messed up or something.
Yeah.
And then, but other than that, I agree with you. They'll probably rotate out a little bit for a couple games at least, and we probably won't really know until, I would hope they would want to know by Houston. Houston will have a pretty good passing game. So.
Yeah, no, they'll have it sorted out by then. But yeah, the soft landing is nice, and part of why I'm not, super worried or super concerned about the lack of experience in the back end. This is not taking on, Eastern Washington in 2016 or whatever that was, where you had a whole bunch of NFL wide receivers and starting Gabrud. A true freshman, and Cage Gabrud, and having those guys, this is different. I mean, these guys are bad. They're bad. Northern Colorado is bad. New Mexico State is bad. They're bad. So,
Northern Colorado is probably one of the worst FCS teams, and right. New Mexico State is definitely one of the worst FBS teams. So.
Yep. So they'll get to try some stuff. They'll get to sort some things out, and they'll figure it out. They'll be fine.
I do have to say, I do like that we do have the really shitty FCS team this year, rather than in a few years recently where we've had, I mean, obviously Portland State we didn't expect, but they turned out to be a pretty damn good FCS team. And because you get no credit for you get the same amount of credit for beating the worst FCS team as you do the absolute best FCS team. No one gives you any less or more credit. Like, maybe, Massey's, rating system. I think he actually,
Sagarin, I think.
Sagarin, that's what it is. Sagarin does actually rates the FCS teams. But no one cares about that. So it's like, it doesn't matter. So just play the really bad ones. Play Idaho State every year. I don't care. Play Idaho now every year. But yeah, so, Jeff, I think, this is a good time to, let SB Nation sell some stuff.
That sounds like a good idea. And we're back.
Woo!
Ooh, that was good.
Well, Jeff, I know you hold on, let's do our normal, oh man, what a cool,
what a great thing. You should definitely subscribe to that thing.
By the way, last week, I came right off and said, I'm definitely subscribing that, blah, blah, blah. Turned out to be a progressive insurance, which is my insurer.
That's funny.
For at least auto. I think it might be our home insurer too. Or, I don't know. Whatever, the bills come and they get paid.
Yeah, there you go. That's all, and that's all that matters until you actually need it.
Yeah, right. I'm in that nice position now where just pay the bill. Whatever. But anyways, it still sucks when they come in the mail. That never gets better.
That is true.
Even when you're expecting it.
That is true.
But yeah, so whatever that was, again, amazing. Probably a great product and or podcast. So
yeah, totally.
But yeah, so one thing I wanted to talk to you about. So I saw you interact on the old Pod versus Everyone Twitter today.
Yeah.
So basically, someone tweeted out some numbers about the combination of donations plus ticket revenue. I assume revenue is what they're going with. A combination of donations
it was ticket sales and donations.
So sales and revenue, same thing.
Yeah.
Combination of sales and donations in the Pac-12. Obviously, we didn't have USC and Stanford because they are private universities. They don't have to share that info, but basically, WSU was last by a fairly decent margin, and they also had added two schools, San Diego State and Boise State, who were roughly the same as WSU. Jeff, I know you had some thoughts on that, especially with regards to the stadium size aspect of that. So what do you think when you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought the methodology was kind of silly for us anyway, just because, like, I mean, the miniature size of our stadium, for lack of a better term, sort of limits where you can rank on that sort of list to begin with, right? So, like, I mean, when your stadium only seats, like 30,000 people, and, you look at this, okay, ticket sales and donations, and you look at, say Utah at 28.3 million, and you go, oh my God, right? Like, Utah's $11 million more in donation, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, but their stadium is also, 25,000 seats bigger than ours, and, whatever. So, and they're in a, a major city. I don't know if Salt Lake City's a major city, but it's certainly a much larger city than Pullman. And so, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of look at lists like that and just kind of go, I mean, I don't, it doesn't make me feel much of anything when I see us number 10, like out of the 10, public institutions in the Pac-12. It just doesn't really make me feel anything, to be honest. The ones that feel like sort of outliers would be like Colorado, because it's not like their stadium's enormous. At 33, almost 33 million. So almost twice as much as ours. I think that speaks to donations, but I don't know. Like, yeah, I think we still have a long way to go, in terms of donations, revenue, things like that. But yeah, I don't know that we're ever going to be in a position where we look at ourselves and go, we're in the top half of the conference or something like that in terms of revenue. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know that that's realistic. Even as, Pat Chun has made some pretty significant inroads on that front. Like, do you disagree? Do you feel like we should aspire to be in the top half of the conference in that sort of metric?
I don't know about top half, but given alumni base size, I think we're bigger than Oregon State. I'm not sure how. I think Utah's bigger, but Oregon State does have the Reser Stadium's like 15,000 seats or 13,000 roughly larger, and they've had pretty recent renovations. I'm sure they have the same sort of luxury boxes and stuff that we do, so they're probably getting a similar level of revenue from that as well. I think the difference you see between them and us, I don't know, 15,000 seats. I know WSU ranks pretty well in terms of overall number of donors. Like when it comes to when they do rank that, WSU ranks higher than they should, even given their relative alumni base size. But we don't have, what WSU does not have as much as some of our peers are the major contributors.
Yeah, the major benefactor. And I mean, that's the
and even like with Oregon State, they have the Reser family.
Right, they've got the Reser family.
And I don't know what Utah, Cal, Cal you would think would have a much larger piece of the pie there, but
yeah.
But so I mean, they're probably, I mean, they're kind of famous for having athletic budget issues.
They also have a huge athletic department. Like that's,
they have a lot of sports.
Yeah, that's one of Cal's issues. They've got about twice as many varsity sports as we do.
They got to get those. Titles and
I mean they've got rugby and polo, water polo, and all kinds of stuff.
I think men's volleyball probably they have as well.
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember for sure, but yeah, I mean it is funny when you look at the size of the athletic departments. And when you look at, these numbers of revenue and things like that, you just go, oh my God. Well, I mean, we're also spending it on a much smaller set of teams than most of our peers. So we, I don't know how many of our fans know this, but we actually have what is sort of the bare minimum for a Division I athletic department. In terms of the number of sports that you have to carry. I don't think many of our fans probably know that, but it's true. It's actually true. There's like a minimum threshold for Division I sports if you're going to be a Division I program, and ours is either right at the minimum or right above the minimum in terms of that. And we're, gosh, I'm trying to remember. I think Oregon State, it's either Oregon State or Utah is next smallest, and they've each got like half a dozen more varsity teams than we do. So it's something like that. I can't remember for sure, but yeah. So I think some of that is overblown to some degree, just because, we have a smaller athletic department. We have fewer teams, now. Maybe we should aspire to have more teams. I don't know. Maybe we should aspire to have a gymnastics team and a men's soccer team and a fast pitch team and those kinds of things.
I would love for us to have a men's soccer team.
Yeah, that would be great. And those are the sorts of things that make the most sense because you've already got the infrastructure for it. So you could have a men's soccer team. If we could take on two more teams, I'd say.
Well, yeah, we'd have to have another. We'd have to have a women's similar number, the same number of athletes.
Exactly, and so it'd probably have to be something like, if you're looking at not an infrastructure investment, you'd be looking at something like gymnastics and then men's soccer. That's probably where you'd be going on that. So, and obviously, they could do fast pitch. I'm sure there are, land where they could have that, but
rugby's a bit of a sport on the rise in the U.S. a little bit.
Rugby's a tough one because there aren't a lot of institutions out west that have rugby teams.
Very true. Yeah.
You'd be looking at I know Cal's big into rugby, BYU obviously big into rugby. I don't know how many other Division I teams there are out west. Lacrosse is sort of the same deal, right? That's more of an East Coast sport.
Yeah.
So,
and water polo is very much water polo, and men's volleyball are very much West Coast sports. Yeah.
Water polo is one that you probably could do. The only, I think, downside there is that you probably don't have the natural recruiting base in this part of the country for that. And I think that's where, like, our women's soccer team has really benefited from that. The Northwest is such a rich ground for soccer.
And particularly women's soccer.
Yeah. Like, it's like, there's a lot of soccer up here. And so, you just, you're able to recruit more locally for that sport probably than, I don't know how volleyball recruits. I don't know if there's a lot in the Northwest there, but I do know soccer's that way. In Canada, we can recruit up into Canada as well. So yeah, it's, I think men's soccer is one, when you've got programs like UW, you got programs like Seattle U has a good soccer team. There's definitely room for another, Division I, power men's soccer team. It's just a matter of finding the money to pay for it. So, if you like those sorts of things, then yeah, we need to get to a point where, not only are we paying off the bills on the current construction, but we're also able to, pay the bills on other sports as well. And, and different people could argue that's not actually worthwhile. I don't know.
And, maybe that they're wrong. Maybe I don't know. It's it
would be fun though.
It would be. It would be fun. I love following the women's soccer team.
Yep.
Obviously, I've gotten a lot more into soccer as I've gotten older, and I just went to in the last week quite a few soccer matches, and so it'd be fun to be watching some. Of course, in soccer, it's different. I think even in U.S. soccer, they're trying to move away from just to drawing from the college teams as much and going more to an academy type system like Europe has. Obviously, we see the Sounders doing that. We see a lot of teams building out academies and trying not to. Although, of course, Christian Roldan did both.
Yeah.
He, stopped playing college ball and then went through. He's a midfielder for the Sounders for like 90% of our listeners.
For all of our listeners who are like, who? What?
But anyway, so that's we could go off on that tangent for a long time. But yeah, so there's definitely like, it is, but if you got to admit when you look at UW 63.7 million, WSU 17.7 million, that is quite a stark difference when it comes to they're our primary rival, and that's what we're competing against, and so what I don't like to see is when Coug fans go like, well, we're just able to do more with less. It's like, well, please don't use that as an excuse not to give.
Right.
Especially if you like seeing the team do well. Like, don't just be like, oh, well, I just expect them to do more with less, so I'm not going to give. Like, I don't really like. It's like that's.
Do you feel like that's changing though? Because I do. I feel like I don't see as much of that as I used to.
Well, you don't follow diehard Cougs on Facebook.
So I was about to say that. I was about to say like I will readily admit that my circle of friends or my, circle of people that I see comments from, whether it be on Twitter or whatever, is different from maybe what's out there. So, I don't know. I see less of it. I do objectively see less of it in the circles that I run in than I used to, but it also could just be that, the circles that I'm in are the ones moving toward, giving more and being more involved, and maybe this other segment is still out there and I just don't interact with them.
Well, what do you think? Like how many CAF members are there? Like 7,000 now?
Yeah, isn't it like 7,500 or something like that?
So there are how many? Without looking, how many members do you think of diehard Cougs there are?
Oh dear, probably not that many. Like, I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time.
No, I want you to vent. I want
the
you to
diehard
guess.
Cougs.
I want you to guess.
Venture a guess.
How many members of the diehard Cougs Facebook group there are?
Well, how big is the Facebook group?
That's what I'm asking you. How many people are in the Facebook group?
Oh, in the Facebook group. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know, 1,000? I don't know.
Really?
I have no idea.
28,595.
No, are you kidding?
28,595.
See, I told you I didn't know anything about
That's how many
Hard Cougs.
die-hard Cougs there are.
And yet there are only
7,500
7,500. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. So
these are people that
Yeah.
love, they love, and I'm borrowing this from Ron Schott, friend of ours on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so, but they're the people that love to like put the pictures on Die Hard Cougs of moving the hats at Costco, moving the Coug hats in front of the,
right.
which we've all done and we all
Right.
enjoy.
Of course.
But like, that's one level. And, love buying a t-shirt. I saw some comments like, oh, there's some of us are just, we have college debt and we're getting out of that, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I get that. But like every alumni base has that. Like it's
right.
but like at the same time, like, I don't know, if you're calling yourself a diehard Coug, like you just maybe want to learn a little bit. And what I've learned in reading this, following this Facebook group is that a lot of them aren't particularly diehard.
Right.
They don't really, they just like have an interest in WSU. And so I'm not going to fault them for, I'm not saying like, oh, you should donate because what are you thinking? You're not a real Coug if you don't donate. And I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying like,
I'll say that.
okay. I'm just saying if you have like such a deep interest in the success of WSU, particularly the football and basketball teams, you probably should consider like donating just because like that directly impacts how like we saw it with like, let's just go back to when Tony Bennett was here. And he's like, we need more of these charter flights and blah blah blah. So like there's things that they can pay for because right now the entire Cougar Athletic Fund isn't enough to pay for all of the scholarships. So we're drawing from football revenue and other football revenue to pay scholarships for all the other sports. So the goal is obviously, and I'm sounding like a calf, but this is just like, I'm just stating the obvious. The goal is obviously to have the donations cover the scholarships, and then the rest of that money that we get from the Pac-12, and we do honestly get the one thing that doesn't show up in those numbers is that we get probably a disproportionate amount from the Pac-12, disproportionately high amount from the Pac-12. Well, definitely disproportionately
as a percentage
high,
of our overall revenue.
As a percentage of our overall revenue,
right.
and as a percentage of probably the our media market and all that. Because but probably the one thing that Bill Moose really deserves credit for is pushing really hard for equal revenue sharing in the Pac-12, and that's what we have. And it may be to the detriment of USC and UCLA and University of Washington, but it is to the benefit of us, and that's something you actually don't see in that number. So those numbers probably, like, they don't get any worse than that. So, because if UW goes to the Rose Bowl and gets a payout for that, well, they get the same amount of money as if they didn't go, another team went to the Rose Bowl. So like it doesn't matter. And if UW or if UW versus USC draws, 10 million or, 20 million viewers, 10 million viewers, or 10, not 20, that's ridiculous, not 20, but 10 million viewers on ESPN, and WSU versus, Oregon State draws 1 million, it doesn't matter. We're both getting the same amount of money there. So like,
and I would argue that all that money is having the desired effect, like having the equal distribution. It's having the desired effect. Wazoo, goes out and hires Mike Leach, right? And we're paying Mike Leach, $4 million a year.
And builds the fob and the
I mean, I'm old enough to remember when I was in school that I am pretty sure Mike Price was making less than $200,000 a year. I'm not positive about that, but that would have been like 97, 98, 96, something like that. But I'm pretty sure That's what we were dealing with. And then we look at, Paul Wolf, obviously Paul Wolf, what was Paul Wolf making? Like 800,000, I think, something like that.
600,000.
600,000. Okay. So now Mike Leach is making $4 million a year. Well, that's only possible through this TV payout. And, lo and behold, Mike, Leach has us on a run that we quite literally have never been on. The problem with the Pac-12 is not that, we're not holding up the end of the bargain. The problem is that USC fucking sucks and Oregon is not doing what it was doing and UCLA is a dumpster fire. And it's like, these programs that are supposed to be, the ones that carry the conference in terms of football. Not that UCLA is supposed to carry the conference, but
they
UCLA,
think they should.
They think they should. But, they're supposed to be at least, if we're being straight, they are supposed to be what we are more or less, right? If we're looking at that.
UCLA should be top 4 every year, which is what WSU has been doing.
Yeah, UCLA should be 8 to 10 wins each year. Washington is good like it's supposed to be. USC is a dumpster fire, and Oregon is on their third coach in 4 years. So it's just like, or we could even say fourth coach in like 6 years or whatever it is. So whatever. The problem is these other programs, and we're holding up our end of the bargain. So. You know what? Screw all you programs out there because we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. Come join us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, if you want to win that goddamn Apple Cup once in a while, I don't know, maybe just
that'd be okay.
Send a few bucks their way.
Yeah, we could do that. But yeah, your overall message is correct that, if you're invested in this thing, give something. I think the minimum annual donation is $100 or something.
To be part of the CAF, I think the minimum is anything, but like
anything.
The minimum if you want to get be a CAF member is $100.
If you want the label, you want to get the little whatever calendar in the mail or whatever it is that they're going to send you, to thank you for your gift. It's
calendar in March that you get in March.
Yeah, right. It's $100 a year. And again, that's not nothing, but you can break it into monthly payments. That's what I do. I give monthly and I don't have, football season tickets, so I'm not compelled to give a much larger amount, but it's not that much to be involved. And I know that our major problem is that we don't have the whale. Right. That's our big problem.
Or even smaller whales, dolphins,
which, I would say it seems like they're bringing more of those kinds of people on board. I don't know. I see more, when I see Chun and Schultz's, Twitter feeds and they're having dinner with, so-and-so. And I'm like, I feel like they're doing a better job of working within that and recognizing the value of that. But look, if the fact of the matter is that we don't have the whale, then we got to do something different, right? If we don't have the donor that's given, $10 million a year or whatever, okay, then, we got to make up for it in a different way. And if that means we get, 10,000 members of the Cougar Athletic Fund, then that's what we got to do, but I would feel.
But it takes $10,100 members to make $1 million member.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, it's, do something, right? Everybody should be able to do something and give in some way. So yeah, it'd be nice to close that revenue gap. It'd be nice to get on the plus side of some bills and, build listen, Mike Leach really, 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 really wants that indoor facility. That is the only reason they're not targeting that next is because baseball is such a disaster.
Right.
Just facilities wise. If baseball was not such a train wreck with its facilities, they'd be moving right on to the indoor facility. But
yeah, baseball playing in the
they have
house.
To take care of baseball first. That's just like, if they don't, they'd be completely negligent. It's already negligent. I'm not going to lie. It's already negligent, but they'd be even more negligent if they didn't take care of baseball next. They have to do that. So, let's get baseball taken care of, and let's move on to the indoor practice facility, which will benefit tons of teams. And if you listen to this podcast and you're rich, for God's sakes, give some real money, please.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing, WSU has benefited because it when it built the football operations building, it was one of the best in the conference.
Yep.
Like even to the point where like USC came and toured ours to figure out how to build theirs.
Yep.
So,
and it's beautiful. I've been in there. It's gorgeous.
But everyone else is building those things.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be any sort of an advantage anymore for, it really isn't anymore.
Well, the indoor facility is just catching up. Like, that's not even an advantage thing. That's just
exactly. That's what I'm
saying.
saying.
We just got to catch up.
Like, the FOB has given Leach and his staff something to recruit to that WSU didn't have before, but now everyone else has it. So you need to at least be level on the other parts, and then otherwise you're like, I know we love to be proud of our diamonds in the rough, but man, if you want more the thing about this consistent like 4-year stretch is, I mean, it's pretty clear that Leach is a better coach than most other coaches, but also their recruiting class has typically been a little bit better than WSU usually gets, especially from a depth level, and so it's not as many diamonds. Like obviously we see guys like Andre Dillard, and we're like, yeah, look, they turn it around. But every program has guys like that. It's just that those are our only guys that we like to look at. But so if you're like begging them to get, higher level recruits or even maintain this level, then we're going to have to catch up in revenue somehow. I don't want to get into this, but I would love to see us, complete the top of the bowl around, just have like, cause I'm pretty sure you could sell out all luxury seats all around the top.
Yep.
And that would make a lot, cause, I don't know if probably most people listen to this know this, but the suites and loge boxes and club seats, even though they are a fraction number of the seats, like a very small fraction of the seats, make as much money as all the rest of the seats in the stadium. So, and
the suites are severely underpriced.
Yep.
like pretty significantly. So, yeah, and there's a wait list to get into the club seats and whatever.
And the loge boxes and
Yep. So, yep. But we're bonded out, so we can't build that
can't
stuff.
Build anymore.
Like, even though we would actually realize revenue, like actual real revenue from that, we literally are maxed out on our bonds. So
the stadium would be super loud with that too, actually.
It would. Could you imagine, by the way, like, would you choose to, if you could sit in the club seats or suites or whatever, which would you choose to sit above the students? Like, would that just be sort of fun?
Well, I don't think you wouldn't hear them.
Yeah, that's true.
You probably wouldn't.
You could see them going bonkers, though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Like, just because, it would be pretty cool. Like to just be right above them. But it'd be interesting to see what people actually chose. Like if people were. Well, I'm sure the 50 to 40 would sell out. People would move if they had seats on the 10, they would move their seat over to the other side.
Yep.
But it'd be interesting if someone chose to be on the 20 so they could be behind the students. Like,
that would be funny. I'd be down with that.
And the club section is really cool. I've been up there, a handful of times just because of friends and taking people up there for the spring game. We talked about this after the spring game.
It's 100% worth it.
People are like, oh my God, WSU is cool.
If you have the money to do it, it's 100% awesome.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Jeff, I think we could probably take another break before we move on.
One more break. Here we go. And we're back.
Woohoo.
Woohoo.
Good
buy
job.
some stuff.
Buy some stuff, whatever.
Yeah. Or subscribe to some stuff.
Subscribe or buy or do both, Maybe they have a Patreon.
Could do both. That's true. Maybe.
But so
what's left? What else we want to talk about?
I had one more WSU related question for you. So I was kind of looking at the schedule, and what I wanted to say was like, what game are you most confident in? What game are you least confident in? But that could be pretty easily identified as Northern Colorado most confident and UW least confident.
That is true.
So I didn't want to do that.
And that's pretty much where we would be going with that.
Yep. And then if I did just in Pac-12 play, you'd go UW least confident in, Oregon State most confident in. So that's not very fun either. So what I wanted you to do is pick a game that you think you're probably more confident in than you should be, or maybe other people think you should be, and then pick a game that you're less confident in than maybe is logical or what other people might think you should be. So let's start with what you're maybe more confident in.
Okay. So the game that I am more confident in than people will think that I should be is Utah. And that stems mostly just from this, that we've been beating Utah like every year. And we haven't lost to him since Leach's first year when he, trotted out the linemen and did the whole thing that Bud Withers was, clutching his pearls over. We have just sort of had Utah's number. And until Utah, shows me that they can beat us with, what they do, until they show me that, Kyle Whittingham is a good coach, which look, I know people love Kyle Whittingham he sort of is his like media darling or whatever, but I just kind of go like, what has he really done since they beat Alabama? Like what have they actually accomplished? And it's like, yeah, okay, so they won the Pac-12 South last year. I mean, congratulations for winning that, piece of crap division. Like, I don't know. Like, there's just, maybe I should, everybody's telling me I should be scared of Utah. Everyone's telling me Utah is terrifying. Everyone's telling me that, Utah, whatever was playing great by the end of the year last year. And I just kind of go, I don't know. And I realize we were an 80-yard touchdown pass to Aesop Winston away from maybe not winning that game last year, but still, it just sort of seems like to me that this is a team that, I don't know if we have their number. I don't know if that's sort of a fair way to say it, but it's a team that for whatever reason we seem to match up against. Everybody talks about, Rice-Eccles Stadium is so hard to play in. Well, we kicked the shit out of them last time we played them there. It's like, I don't know. Like it doesn't, I agree that Utah's tough and they'll probably, they play their trademark, physical brand of football or whatever, and they're going to be good and, yada, yada, but we're pretty good too. And I don't see any reason to be scared of Utah, at least in the way that, that other people are sort of making it out to be.
Good one. That's a very good one.
Yeah. So suck it, Utes.
Yeah. I'm going to go with probably exact same line of thinking is going to go Oregon. Obviously, Oregon is in the same. It's probably Oregon and Utah. Outside of UW, who's been the top team and one of the top teams in the conference for 3 years running now, but Oregon and Utah are kind of the darlings this year of like the trendy picks to be like the teams to dominate. And Oregon is obviously heavily because of the recruiting class they just brought in and Justin Herbert. But again, it's the same. Like, to even more extent, the last 4 years, I think that compared to what WSU has done to Utah is like they've just beat the pants off of Oregon. And last year, got close, but WSU never really relinquished control of that. They beat the pants off them 2 years before that. They had that miraculous comeback to start the run. I think that a lot of our players, I think Oregon is that program that was kind of the West Coast program when a lot of our players were in junior high and high school. Mm-hmm. So I think they view Oregon like maybe past players would have viewed USC. So I think it's just to some extent that happens with Stanford as well. But, so I think like, obviously like we're going to come in with like that WSU at Oregon, no matter what our records are, we're probably going to be a touchdown, at least, underdog. And I just, it's like,
I think by the way, I think the current line is right about there. Yeah. There's an early line on that, and I think it's right about a touchdown.
Yeah. And so, I just, I do think overall WSU is getting more has a bigger belief from odds makers, because it was pretty crazy to see that their win total was at 8. I think the over under, which is shitty to have it be a solid number, but 8, which it's kind of crazy. I think that WSU's over under is 8 from Vegas. So obviously, if we're confident in them, we're not the only ones. But yeah, WSU Oregon, I don't know, Oregon is just WSU under Leach has just is a very tough team, just mentally tough, physically tough team. Yep. And Oregon has typically been pretty soft, and I don't know how much. Maybe Cristobal is changing.
He's trying. He's trying really hard.
I mean, he says he is, but I don't. But it's Oregon, and that's been a big part of why WSU has beat the pants off of Oregon, is because, frankly, our guys have a chip on their shoulder, and especially when they're playing Oregon, and they just want to beat them up, and they have. And Oregon has been generally softer teams that haven't been able to kind of handle any sort of adversity and all that. But Oregon's obviously, I don't doubt that they're going to be a very good team this year. I think, but I still think that they still are liable to be that same 8-4 team or whatever they were last year. And WSU could be it's not crazy to me to think WSU could go down there and beat them. So I'm probably more confident than I should be, given the levels of talent on each team. But when you look at just the history and even when Leach lost the season before to Oregon, they almost beat him when they had Marcus Mariota. So
if not for a pass interference that wasn't called.
Yeah, exactly. So it could very much be a 5-game streak at this point. So yeah, that's my more confident than I should be is Oregon. So Jeff, what's your less confident than you should be?
Well, I think this is the one where I go Apple Cup, because logic would dictate that we have more than a 0% chance of winning that game, but I am convinced it's a 0% chance of winning that game. So it's sort of like, I want to, I just, in my head, I'm like, we are going to lose that game forever and into eternity, and it's never going to change. And it's, it's sort of the same logic, honestly, as the Utah and Oregon, like we just talked about. It's like, it is what it is until it isn't, right? And so the last, 3, 4, 5 years, particularly the last 4 years, we've had these runs against some good programs, against Utah, against Oregon, against Stanford, right? Like we've had these runs against these programs, and then Washington is the same, but the opposite, where it's just like, we just get our face kicked in every year. So that's the one where I am less confident than I should be, because I'm convinced we're never going to beat the Huskies in my lifetime again. And of course, logic would dictate that, something could happen maybe somehow. So.
That's good. One that I was, Apple Cup, obviously, I'm right there with you. 0%, never going to win that game, ever.
Never. It's over already.
Yep. It's already over. I guarantee you, when we do our Coug Center author picks, not one of us is going to pick a W in that game.
No.
But mine is going to be UCLA. And not that I think that WSU is going to lose that game, but I still am fairly worried about it. WSU's they get an extra day, but coming off of being down in Houston, and Chip Kelly is I'm very high on him as a college football coach. I think that even though they're coming off a 3-9, I think they're going to improve quite a bit this season. I think they're going to be a much tougher out than they were last season, when WSU missed them, of course. Would have been much nicer to play UCLA and not USC last year, especially early in the season. But yeah, and I like it a lot more when UCLA comes up to WSU in the late fall versus
come up when it's cold and wet.
Yeah, it's probably going to be nice weather on 9/21 in Pullman.
Almost certainly.
So I would much rather have seen UCLA come up when it's cold. Of course, we do get Stanford and when it's cold, and so you can't have it all. But Colorado can come see us in September. That's fine. Although the last time that happened didn't go very well.
Let's not remember that one.
Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, UCLA it's largely a Chip Kelly factor, and then I know UCLA has athletes. But UCLA has been that same thing where they've been soft, but Oregon wasn't soft when Chip Kelly was their coach.
That's
Oregon
true.
was not that soft team when Chip Kelly was their coach. So I do think that Chip Kelly will turn them around eventually, and I hope that I'm worried that the start of that will be a win against a potentially and probably ranked WSU team. Like if they're able to get by Houston, they'll probably be ranked in the top 20 at that point, and that'll be quite a motivation for UCLA to kind of say, "Hey, look, we're on our way back." So there's a little bit of worry in my gut. I'm also worried about the Houston game before, but that's just because it's on the road and it's on a Friday.
Yeah.
It's weird. I don't like that. But UCLA, I think I think if you look at the schedule, you go, oh, like just cursory look at the schedule. Oh yeah, UCLA was 3-9 last year. We can take them down. We actually have given those, we looked at those revenue disparities, like UCLA, like we play UCLA pretty well generally. A lot of our players come from Southern California. I think they like playing UCLA, but at the same time, I just I think they're coming out with something to prove in that game, and so I have a worry for that one, a worry for every game, of course, but probably a greater worry than I should for that game.
They are going to be coming off of what it will likely be an ass kicking at the hands of Oklahoma the week before. They host them at the Rose Bowl, but that's probably going to be a crazy butt kicking. I think we'll learn quite a bit about them the first couple weeks. They play at Cincinnati and then against San Diego State, two teams that you would be like, okay, UCLA should beat, right? So, how well do they do beating those teams or playing those teams? Maybe they don't beat them, who knows? The one thing about Chip Kelly and UCLA is frankly, they just didn't recruit very well last offseason, and didn't have a great recruiting class, in his first sort of, truncated recruiting class either. So, I know that there were a lot of really good athletes there from when Jim Mora was the coach. A lot of those guys left when Chip Kelly was hired, and then he hasn't really seemed to stock the cupboard with the kinds of players that he had at Oregon. So maybe he's just that good a coach, doesn't need those good of players, or maybe some of that magic's gone. I think the first few games will tell us a little bit, and it might be a situation where we have a little bit of a wounded animal coming in there, or maybe they look like they've put some things together and they put up a surprisingly good showing against Oklahoma. Who knows? It's tough, but that was one that I was thinking of as well, just because I feel like there's a wild card there that UCLA could be a lot better this year than we think. So,
yeah. So, but if you're a true Cougar fan, you're worried about everyone, including New Mexico State and Northern Colorado.
That is true.
Every game is
a potential embarrassment.
Yep. Every single game. We've done that, and we know it, and so never take the success for granted. Ever, nope. Ever.
Never.
All right, man. So there was another. I sent you a tweet before we got on this podcast. So we're moving off the Coug stuff. So sorry. I think we did a pretty good job.
But we're not going to wander into politics if people are worried that we're going to say something like the president is racist or something in the podcast.
But we are going to talk about, I don't know, millennials. No.
We kind of are.
So someone posted this picture on Twitter, and I've seen a similar thing at other coffee shops around the country before. It says, "We do not have Wi-Fi. Talk to each other and pretend it's 1995."
Yes.
And so I saw this other, response to it. Fun fact: the pre-internet's from Panzer Lion at POC Gamer. Fun fact: the pre-internet / social media / smartphone era was not, in fact, filled with random strangers making constant conversation because they were undistracted. And if you go into the thread, there's people with like old timey paintings of a group of people and no one's looking at each other. A picture of like an old train with everyone's reading the newspaper. People are showing pictures of their Game Boys and like things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's true. I think particularly that they chose to go with it's 1995. I'm pretty sure internet cafes were already becoming a thing by then.
Well, here's what I can say. I graduated from high school in 1995, and I was obviously then a freshman at Wazoo in 1995. My first exposure to the internet was at WSU. So that was, there was a computer lab down on the bottom floor of Stevenson. I did not have my own computer because, my goodness, that was a luxury, right? To have actually your own computer.
Yep.
Not a lot of people did. So I had, paid whatever the membership was to go down to the computer lab down there. And so that was the first time I got an email address and discovered the internet and was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And I was like emailing my friends who went, to the University of Washington. And it was like, I mean, this is like writing a letter, except it's like instant. This is unbelievable, So internet cafes might have been just sort of starting up at that point. That's a possibility. But I will say this, that like the ridiculousness of the tweet is totally true. Like this idea that somehow we were all, social with each other and we talked to strangers and it was just a much, much, much more, social world is sort of insane. But the idea that, in 1995 there wasn't any Wi-Fi, that was true for the most part. But yeah, I mean, people weren't running around being like, hey, let me talk to this random person. Or people would go out to dinner. It's like, people go out to dinner and they'd still have awkward silences. I mean, whatever. It's kind of silly the way people remember things, back in the good old days when it probably wasn't all that different.
Well, I think especially at a coffee shop or something, like if you go to a bar, I expect, more random conversation. I've had a lot of random conversations at a bar, and I have always had a cell phone in my pocket every time. But I've had a lot of random conversations in a bar because, you've had drinks and it's more of a social atmosphere. I think coffee shops, in this iteration of them, which probably started, I'm assuming, in the 90s, is in place where people go to work or to read or just to kind of check out and not I've never seen it. You might meet a friend there and talk to them, but I don't know if I've never heard of a coffee shop as a place to go meet someone.
Right.
So that notion that coffee shops, they take this stance that we don't have.
Yeah.
Really and so really what, and I won't dispute that smartphones do, particularly in conversations with your loved ones, probably play a role in some inattentiveness. I know that sometimes, but I think that maybe we were just being not paying attention some other way before. But yeah. I know I'll be looking at my phone and Amanda will say something to me and I'll not get any of it. And but I don't know, maybe I'll be reading a book at some other time or watching a television show or whatever, because now we're watching television shows while we're also on our smartphones. I think maybe how much we absorb the media that we're paying for on our television is probably diminished by our smartphones a little bit. But anyways, that's a different topic. But yeah, I don't think people were going to coffee shops to be like, hey, I'm going to go meet a new friend. I'm going to go get jazzed up on caffeine and start talking to people.
Yeah.
I don't like, that just seems weird. Like, really what the crux of this, like what they really don't like. And I understand this as a business. Like, you don't want people coming in, logging onto your Wi-Fi,
yes,
ordering a drip coffee.
Yes, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, ordering drip coffee and being there for 5 hours and taking up a seat.
That's
for a
exactly
customer that
what
might
this
actually
is.
be buying food and whatever.
Because you don't need Wi-Fi to have a distraction from a device, right? We all have data plans. Like,
right, exactly.
You don't need the Wi-Fi. All they're really trying to do is make sure nobody's like posting up with their laptop for 5 hours and drinking refills of drip coffee. Right. That's exactly what this is. It's not a comment on culture. It's a business thing where they're like, yeah, we don't want you hanging out here all day.
Exactly. And that was, I remember back when I lived in Vermont, so it was around 2012, like there was a coffee shop that was right, very close to the university. But it was well known for not having Wi-Fi. And so, of course the local paper went to talk to them, like, why don't you offer Wi-Fi? It's because they were like, well, college kids would come here, order nothing, and sit here for 6 hours. And then no one would, like, people, they were in a downtown core area where if you saw that coffee shop full, you might move to a different coffee shop. So people wouldn't come and sit down. And I understand that. But at the same time, there's probably other ways than to just like be snarky about, like, oh, pretend it's 1995, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, so in 1995, you probably had, if you're a coffee shop, you probably had newspapers sitting there like for free for people to grab and read. And you might have even had a bookshelf with books on it for people to read, or people would bring in a book and you wouldn't be like, how dare look at that person reading a book. How dare they?
How dare they? They should be talking to somebody.
Yeah. Like, what are they doing reading the newspaper?
Terrible.
The funny thing is a lot of people probably are reading books on their devices. They're probably reading a book on their laptop or their cell phone or their tablet or whatever. But yeah, it's just about, protecting the space you have in your business from just being, overrun. But there's a lot of cafes that probably do really well because they offer Wi-Fi. And they offer good Wi-Fi, so people go there to work. And I know when I go someplace, and I do this quite often because I work from home, and sometimes you just need to get out of your house.
Yep.
Like, I just make sure, once every so often, and this sucks because I don't drink a lot of caffeine, so I have to try to find where they have that Rooibos tea, doesn't have any caffeine in it. It's not super good, but I just feel like I gotta buy something. I'm just paying the toll because I'm taking up a space.
Sure.
The less people are in there, the less compelled I feel to do that. Of course, if it's not that full, then I don't care as much. But if it's a full place, I'm definitely every hour I'm going back at least to go up and buy another thing, which is totally fine with me. This is someone's business, and if I'm taking up a seat, I'm going to be a customer. But yeah, I know I'm not the only one that does. I know not everyone does that, so I understand why the cafe would not want to offer Wi-Fi because they don't want people sitting on their laptops. But yeah, they don't need to pretend. If they're saying pretend it's 95, well, they don't need to pretend that that's why you put that up there. You're just sick of people just posting up on their laptop and writing a term paper.
If the place is busy, personally, I feel okay, it kind of depends on how busy the place is, right? If they're super busy and I'm hanging out having a coffee, then I'll probably go, maybe order, another pastry or something, I'll do something to kind of justify my existence there. But if it's a place where, for example, this place where the picture was apparently taken that looks totally empty, it's what are you stressing about? I don't know. I think people tend to go to coffee shops that are busier anyway. There's an element of like, I don't know if anybody's ever said this to you, but like, I once got a piece of advice. Hey, when you're traveling, just like drive, if you're driving downtown or whatever, just look for the restaurants that are busy and go there because the food's probably good. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like, if I see a coffee shop that's got tons of people in it, then yeah, coffee's probably good and it's probably a good place to hang out. So I might do that. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who does that.
Yeah, that's obviously now we have like so many ways to look at reviews for restaurants.
That is true.
That's definitely an old school way, but like, but yeah, it's, I think that there isn't a natural, I mean, like people will go wait in a line because they think that these people must be waiting for something interesting. And so it's like a natural like thing for humans to like be drawn to what the crowd is doing, and that must be the good thing. But yeah, so, and truthfully also, like, I like a busy atmosphere. I always am very productive when I'm like traveling for work to events where there's like tons of people around and it's crazy. It's just that like that kind of intensity gives me like this energy to get work done. So that's why I'll kind of, sometimes if I'm feeling, that I'm just having a productive lull at home, I'll go to a coffee shop. And if I go to like a completely empty coffee shop, like I don't get anything done. But if I go to like a coffee shop that's full and I feel like I need to focus because I don't want to, I'll put my headphones on and I'll just be like, I got to focus in. And there's some level of this, like, you don't want to be the dude that's just like looking at Facebook and Twitter while you're at the coffee shop. So you're like, oh, I got to be doing something, so I'll do that. I do go to, if it gets a little like later, I'll go to a bar and have a beer and do some work as well. But I've tried that in the middle of the day, like get lunch at a bar, or at a beer bar or something, and then get my laptop out and start working. But I notice like when no one's around, like I just don't feel compelled to do anything. So yeah, I do like from a busyness, from a productive standpoint, I much prefer there to be people around. And I always know, like I could probably start tracking it, but if I show up at a coffee shop and like I'm snagging the last available seat or something, like I'll just like get locked in and I'll start working. And I'll probably also like be more like aware of, how much money I'm spending and probably spend a little more. But, just cause if I'm drinking the coffee, I have to get up to pee anyway. And then you have to have that uncomfortable, like, hey, can you watch my computer while I'm going to the bathroom? Yeah. Well, I have the watch now that tells me to stand up.
I was going to say, hey, person that I've been sitting next to for the last hour, I seem to trust you now. Can you watch my computer?
Oh, yeah. I don't even do that because it doesn't make a difference. Like, if you ask them, they're going to say yes. So what are they going to do? Like, what difference is it going to make? Like, I don't know, maybe you're making them aware that you own that computer and it's not some other person, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I don't think it makes much of a difference, so I don't even bother. I just leave my shit there, and I take my phone, and I close my laptop.
Yeah, you have a Mac anyway, so you've got, Find My Mac.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, yeah, go ahead and steal it, bitch. I'll find you.
I'll find you. But yeah, so yeah, whatever, man. Like 1995. Everyone was just walking around, talking to each other. That's why grunge was so popular in the 90s, because it was all about everyone being happy and talking to each other all the time. It was super great. Like, people just made friends constantly. They just had these they never read a newspaper. I know they wouldn't have newspapers sitting out at coffee places or anything. Like, it was just, there was no distractions. We just all just talked to each other. And we definitely didn't just sit there awkwardly if we didn't talk to each other. Because, when your phone dies, you definitely just start talking to everyone around you, right? That's what you do.
Yeah, because that's what people without phones and Wi-Fi do.
Because we all need to just be constantly talking to someone. That's everyone's impulse. But yeah, whatever. That was really, it's always fun to make fun of people who think they're making some commentary on the world and they're actually just being stupid.
Yep.
All right, man. You got any kid stories? You got anything else to talk about?
No. I actually don't have any good kid stories. We were getting ready to go camping, so I'm excited for that. Yeah. We're going
fun.
to Lake Sylvia, which is out by Montesano. So we're going to go do that for a few days. I'm going to get the episode mixed up and uploaded and posted to the site. And
doing some midweek camping, so you're not going to be bothered by others. You won't have to worry about engaging.
I think there's lots of people around us, but we were actually able to get a site because we are going in the middle of the week, which is one of the super nice things about vacation. I don't have to wait till the weekends when it's all busy.
Absolutely. We're gonna take the ferry up to Vashon. I have no idea what's up there to look at, but Amanda seemed excited about it, so.
Yeah. That'll be awesome.
Yeah. There's no soccer games this week. I don't even know what I'm going to go do.
What are you even going to do?
It's Tacoma Beer Week, but I kind of went pretty hard last week, so I feel like, all right, you have your fun events. I'm just gonna take a break. But yeah.
Yeah.
It's always beer week for me.
Always.
Yeah.
I mean, there are worse weeks.
All right, man.
All right.
No talk of B and your kids today. Sparing our listeners for that. We just did our we brought back a pop culture segment.
We did do
for the
that.
first time in probably months.
I feel good about that.
So if you like that, or especially if you like the WSU talk, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars on whatever app you're using. Or if you're using any app, just go ahead and go onto the Apple Podcast app and rate us 5 stars on there, even if you don't download it from there. Just because that's where most people do it. So it shows up when people search for things, and so we appreciate that. If we're getting ratings, then it's more likely to show up if people search for WSU podcasts or whatever. So we appreciate it if you do that. Also, if you can go ahead and subscribe on whatever service you're on, then it just gets sent straight to your device. You don't have to think about it. And football season's starting pretty soon. You're going to have our podcast showing up. You're going to have Michael Preston's Coug Center Hour showing up. So you're going to have lots of fun Coug talk. Maybe if you're caught driving to Pullman and maybe you're in a dead spot, it'd be nice to have that thing downloaded on your phone. You can just fire it up. It'll work anyway. So we hope to cover some of your drive come football season. But anyway, subscribe to us. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.